Okay, we're live for the next edition of the Data Value Show. I think I've just checked, it's the 41st edition of the show today, and I am really excited to have Robert Harmon on the show today. And without further ado, let's bring him onto the stage. Hey, Robert, how you doing?
I'm well, Chris. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. Apart from obviously England's lost the football last night, so it could have been it could have been better, but it's still a good match to watch. So it was fun. But yeah, so so a bit of background. So I think I've been collaborating, or we've been exchanging comments online for good couple of years now, and I thought it'd be great to have you on the show and share some of your knowledge and experience. I always love your, like I said in the post, the passion and your dedication to this industry, and so thanks for coming on here. But for the audience that don't already know you, do you want to give yourself a little bit of intro?
Oh, sure. Let's go for the short one. So I've been in the data industry now for, I just did the math, 27 years. My first data warehouse was 26 years ago. So I've been doing this a while. Most of that period I've been working with and managing internal data teams. But recently I moved from managing internal data teams to consulting, and then to working for a data platform provider, and that got me out of my world. So a lot of those years I'm managing a data team, I'm doing things a certain way, and being quite effective. Not to sound egotistical, but we were hitting goals and doing great work at a number of companies. But when I moved out into the consulting world and out into the platform provider world, I got to see a whole lot more data teams. So I could see stark contrast between what the average data team is doing, or what many data teams are doing, and what I had been doing in my own data teams. And so this is probably about the time you and I, Chris, started bumping into each other online. Because of that experience, I started writing on things like, why are these massive data teams not achieving objectives? When I've been running some of the largest, most complicated data warehouses on the planet with like 3.5 guys, 4 guys. So you can see the shock that it's an internal shock, and that's kind of why we started talking with each other. Now that said, I probably did my career backwards. If I had a choice to do it all over again, I just started working for a platform provider, and then a consultancy, and then go into internal data teams. And the reason for that is, if you are customer facing at a platform provider like I was, you are forced to learn all kinds of skills that most data people don't have. And that as well is an asset in efficiency. If I can shake down a data consumer in, say, 30 minutes, get to the root of their real problem, formulate a solution, and get on with life, that's an asset that is really, really helpful. Not to say I didn't have it before, but man, did we perfect it later. So how's that for a weird intro?
That's brilliant, and I think there's a few things that resonate with me. I think one of them was, what can be delivered with a small team. So I've been doing this actually a little bit longer than you, but not much. I think that's 30 years. I think when I started this industry, I was working for Cognos. Well, I've actually more than that, but let's keep it a 30 round number. But we used to deliver some great stuff with a very small team. Three of us. Building the database, building the ETL, getting the requirements, building the reporting layer, doing the metadata modeling, even doing the DBA tuning on the not only that, installing the software onto. I remember the things
on the real iron.
Yeah. We'll put the CDs in the old data center room, where it's nice and cold, and putting it in there and. Putting it into what they call the compact pizza boxes. I think DL580, the actual model numbers, but yeah. So and we've seemed to have in some ways gone backwards. I think with what gets delivered now, and how big a team you need how big a team you need to do this. And I did a post the other day. Sorry, I did a post the other day about is it a role? Is architecture a role? Data modeling a role, or is it a skill set? So it's. Yeah, I think you just need to have your product is something good on it. You don't need to have individual. You don't have to have 5 people to go and to deliver a data product. I think it's getting that mixture of the right skills and the right mindset in a smaller team.
Well, and honestly, there are data problems that are going to need a larger team for a short period of time because of time constraints and the amount of stuff going on in your project. That will happen. So I'm not trying to throw out an ideal number of staff. I can't know. I just, it's impossible. That said, I think a lot of teams are, too big. And that's not me, trying to get rid of people in the data industry, though it does make it easier for me to compete for jobs if there's less of you out there. But that's neither here nor there. Really, what I'm looking for is that efficiency. So if you've got a 10-man team and you only need 5 to meet current objectives, well, great. Now I got 5 guys to go figure out how to do something even cooler. That's, I don't have to get rid of staff. Please don't look at me like that guy that's trying to, shrink teams necessarily. I want to do more. If I have slack in my team, I'm going to impress the business. I'm going to push the revenues up because now I have time and manpower to do that. So that's part of that mentality. But I did want to, go back to something you touched on there. You mentioned it almost seems like we're going backwards. I think we're going backwards and sideways at the same time. I think there's a couple of things that, and I didn't want to go here. This was not my objective of this discussion, but here we are. It was going to happen. We do run into this history lesson that, and you and I both remember the 90s and the 2000s where we're dealing with RDBMS, even using RDBMS products for data warehouses. Our processes were tidy. It's not about the platform, but our processes were very tidy. We had transactional stuff that happened in a transactional system. We highly normalized it. We put all the constraints in the world in there because that way we don't get dirty data. And then we export it to a file share somewhere, which we now call a data lake. It's still the same thing. And that export, inherits all the constraints from the transactional system. And then this is where we went one of 2 paths. Half of us went down the corporate information factory route, where this data was then brought into an operational data store to co-locate it. All we're doing here, the only reason we're doing this is to co-locate it. So I can get data from sales and I can get data from HR into the same functional database. That's all I'm doing. And if we've got it in the ODS and it's all co-located, we can make that envelope very, very small. That latency is almost non-existent. I can dump from the operational system, load it into the ODS, and it'll take milliseconds because I'm not transforming anything. I'm just dragging it in. And if I'm getting a little ahead of myself and thinking more strategically, and this is one of those efficiency tricks, if I apply time variance to my relations when I bring it into the ODS, then I evade updates and inserts, or updates and deletes, which makes that even faster, though I do carry more data load. So that reduces manpower because now I've already taken care of time variance and I put it in my operational data store. And now everybody's got immediate operational metrics. Now they're complicated because I know Joe in the sales system is not the same as Joe in the financial system. So you get the idea. But we got that little thing tidied up. All of this code is boring because it's the exact same code over and over. And you can easily automate this if you want, getting rid of more manpower. But if you lean on that operational data store, you get that immediate payoff that, hey, look, I can get all your data co-located. I can throw in time variance here at no cost. I'm getting toward a larger solution. The other crowd went a different direction and started creating data marts,
Yep.
which may or may not be quite as efficient, because now you're trying to handle time variance and subject orientation in parallel straight from the transactional systems. You get the idea. Both were superior to what we saw when Hadoop hit.
100%. And when you first, sorry, go.
This was the nuclear bomb in the data world, was Hadoop. It blew all our processes up.
Yeah, the schema on read was the worst thing that ever happened, as well as just dumping it all into Hadoop. But I think just on ODS, I mean, I used to have them in my designs, and I've built many over the years, and they were the nice foundations that you built your data marts off later for your Kimball style, facts, dimensions, SCDs, and things like that. But I hadn't. I mean, it seems to be like a forgotten thing until I heard you online talking about it quite a few times, and I think it seems to be overlooked now, and with people just putting it into the data lake now, and you're losing all that referential integrity. You're losing all of that relationships between all the objects that are there, and it's never the easiest foundation to go and build on top of your data mart. So I think there was lots of benefits from that approach. So why do you think there's not more people going and taking that ODS style approach now for operational reporting?
Well, first off, we're getting old.
That's true.
No. I mentioned that the Hadoop era is problematic, and it's not just problematic because of the technology. It's more problematic because of the mentality that sprung up around it. We lived in a very, very structured world prior to that, especially in operational type data structures, whether it's a transactional data system or, in this case, an operational data store. When we moved to the big data world, we shed that structure because it was very difficult to enforce across, a federated compute system. Now, that doesn't mean it couldn't be done. Certainly it could be done. You load your data up into Hadoop, and then you run a bunch of checks through code, just like, a domain check would work in SQL Server. And then you validate that your data was laid down properly, and you throw a big old fat error and you roll back if it goes wrong. Mm-hmm. You could do this in Hadoop. It's just that nobody did, because now everybody's so terribly busy with these piles and piles of petabytes of data that they refuse to spend the time making sure these petabytes are right, which has follow-on effects. Because now if your data is not right, and I've got a 5-man data crew and I wrote a bunch of data that wasn't right, now I need to go invest in data quality software, data quality people. I need data governance software. I need data governance people. And again, not to sound like an old man yelling at clouds, this should be baked into the schema.
Yeah.
And again, reduces manpower, because if I lay a piece of data down and it's right every time, and I can guarantee that because my constraints have my back, I don't need 20 guys to check my math. I know it. Of course, that brings up other issues that are bigger than the day-to-day work of the data world. And we touched on it a little bit before we started broadcasting today, is, architecture. Why do I know my data is right? Because I went out and terrorized all the key stakeholders, and I know everything they think about their business. And I've written it down in nice, neat, predicate logic based business rules that are in English that define whatever this thing is. And then I went back to them and say, does this look right? And then we argue about it until we get it perfect. And then I have them sign it or put their name
Yeah.
on it so
Yeah.
that I know that an active customer is, here's the stinking definition for an active customer. I'm not going to go rounds with this anymore. We've already come to the, then I'll write the code. And then I'll write the constraints. And then I'll lay everything down. And I can guarantee, since I have the business rules, I have the constraints that match the business rules, you get the idea. It's going to be right. I don't have to come back with a bunch of quality assurance nonsense, because that's what constraints are for. And if I don't have constraints, many modern data warehouse platforms don't have things like check constraints or RI constraints. I can always write the code that will verify those conditions. It'll go a little slower every batch, but I mean, we're talking milliseconds here. But at least my data will be right, and I won't get phone calls at 6 a.m. saying, "Hey, Rob, it's all off." But that I think that process, whether data architect is a role or not, I think that process took a big hit during the big data dark days
Big
as
data bubble.
well. That mentality didn't hook. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say data lakes are a bad idea, because everything I just said can be done in a data lake. There's nothing against that. I'm not being platform specific here or even cutting out subsets of platforms, but the work still needs to get done. That data has to be accurate the first time I lay it down. And the only way I can do that is to go back to everybody involved in a certain problem and ask them dumb questions like, really, active users per day? Okay, tell me, explain to me, what is a day in your world? Which sounds like the dumbest question ever.
What's the definition of active? Logged on, running a query. So it's I think that big data bubble. I think because the technology changed, it was a different sort of breed of people, that engineers that are coming in there. They had more Java, less SQL, more Java skills, and more software sort of development skills. But I think the missing thing is we never talk to business, and that might be the characteristics of those people. And also, I was living during this period as well as the big data people looked down and laughed at us people still running things on Oracle, Exadata, and you're dinosaurs. You don't know what you're doing anymore. So there was very much of them and us. And fast forward a bit, we've got a lot of those engineers that come from the Hadoop world have come into, I'm going to call it the modern data stack, era. And some of us dinosaurs are still around, and then we're going, here you go. We told you so. We told you about your data modeling. Well, we try not to do it so smug,
That's a challenge.
It's one of the skills I'm working on, is being less smug when I deliver these messages sometimes, but I'm trying.
Honestly, I'm getting more senior myself. I fight that urge. I do make fun of myself every so often that I do feel like an old man yelling at a cloud. But along with everything you just stated about that period, the other thing that happened as big data hit the scene is the hiring volumes in data increased exponentially. So we brought a lot of people on board, like a lot. This became a very big industry, which I thought was really weird because, I was a geek hanging out in a data pit somewhere. I thought nobody knew what I did for a living. All of a sudden, everybody wants to be in data. It was uncomfortable. But with that, those new people did not go through what those of us a generation earlier did. I remember my mentors, they weren't like us. They were very, very strict. They were very blunt. They were, you don't step outside of this box. This is the box you live in kind of mentality. And of course there's going to be generational divides. That's how this happens. The problem, the issue there is that we did lose a lot in the industry as baseline knowledge, I believe. I'm not, and again, I'm not picking on the next generation. This is just what happened. I think it's to us, guys like you and me, to reintroduce that baseline knowledge,
Yeah.
and somehow not offend the people we're
Yes.
talking
Yeah.
to.
No, yeah. Yeah. Totally. And I think the other is we can. I call it reverse mentoring. It's learning things from the next generation. It's not.
Oh,
It's
sure.
not like a binary thing. But I think another thing that created that storm, that perfect storm, was you could just throw compute at it. So
Oh, yeah.
some of the we talk about this optimizing things like that. I remember seeing an optimize. You're looking at explain plans and trying to get the cost down because you knew that you had to have this much concurrency. The box only had that many threads, or it had that much memory, or it had the different PGA memory, the SGA memory.
Yeah.
You actually really had to. I'm going to use the word architect things, because without just going for it and just playing around, it will never run in production. It would never it would never scale, because you couldn't just go and turn the box up. I'll have to pause. I've got a speaker in the background. Sorry. So yeah, so for the audience, I'm in an airport lounge, and they keep giving details of the flights going in a second. So apologies about that. But yeah. So as I'm saying, it's you can't just, back when we were doing it, you couldn't just go, okay, I'm just going to get another half rack of an Exadata so I can run that query, because it's slow at the moment. You had to work out, okay, how can I be the most efficient with the hardware I've got to get the best results quick, and that was a combination of good data modeling, good indexing strategy, good partitioning strategy, and some well-written SQL.
And don't forget great hardware, man. Hardware vendors have saved my butt a number of times over the years. But that's very different than today, where we're not fighting. Is a piece of hardware available on the market that can do what I want? Now what we're fighting is our bill.
Yes, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all there is.
So then we had to invent FinOps for that as well, didn't we?
Which is more manpower again. So we end up in this vicious cycle. Now, don't get me wrong. I remember being at Cupertino prototyping the RX 8600 series hardware because we were going to be their first customer at $1 million a pop. But yeah, if I get 3 of those, my management's going to want me to get at least 5 years out of them.
Sorry, I'm just going to put a question up from Russell here, and I was going to bring it up. I brought it up too quick, but architecture optimization is a great, and hi Russell, by the way, sorry. Architecture optimization is a great and huge advantage to building any pipelines or subsequent data processes. Now, the probability of significantly disrupting to the source data are not zero. Where do we spend on defining response methodologies for extreme events? Let's unpack that.
Yeah, I'm going to need to read it one more time.
Yeah.
So I'm trying. Russell, please correct me if I'm wrong here. It appears that we're talking about data management in source systems rather than in follow-on systems. Yeah, that's a whole bottle of wax that much of the industry has completely ignored lately, because data warehouses or business analytics is really the sexy world. So those of us that actually work in transactional systems don't get nearly the press we deserve. There's some poor guy who crossed over from being a developer into, he's going to manage the database because his app needs a database. These are big problems. So we look at.
He's just confirmed. Yeah. So when the source system data breaks something,
Then all heck can break loose. Now, it depends on your meaning of break, and I've experienced a lot of breaks. I have broken more data systems, I swear, than I've actually kept going over the years. It happens. Um, when I spent a lot of time in the ad tech world, and one of the ad tech systems I was managing, this operational system, transactional system. If this thing goes down, we lose $500,000 a day type of transactional system that end users are interacting with all day. There are infinite opportunities to break the thing. It's fragile. And that's not unique to this system. It's just this system was handling more data than most. What we found very, very quickly is we needed an entirely separate environment to manage pre-deployment code, obviously. If I've got 10,000 batch requests per second coming into a SQL environment, and they're firing off, each one is firing off one of about 3,000 different types of queries, whether they're selects or inserts or updates. It's very, very easy, since everything is interconnected through the data model, to completely blow it up. In that case, really what we would do is we would take traces from that from the production transaction system, get an hour's worth of trace. So if I'm promoting code, I'll promote that code to my QA environment. I'll rerun that trace. And since I've got the output from production and I now have the output from QA, it's not going to match perfectly. But as long as I'm within a standard deviation of the norm, I know my code base is secure. Of course, I would also have all of my downstream systems in that same QA environment. So when I fire up the loads for my operational data store in my QA environment, and I fire up the loads for my data warehouse in my QA environment, I can see that this batch is within a standard deviation of the previous batches. I didn't blow it up. Or if I did something stupid like drop a field and not account for it, it will blow up in QA. But this is, this is pretty standard stuff. The problem is, in big systems, it's more complicated to maintain because you're effectively managing a mini version of production in QA. And it's expensive.
You just mentioned having a QA environment, a UAT environment, a pre-prod environment. I think that's one of the issues is not everyone has the luxury or actually has invested the time to actually make sure they have those different environments. And I think the other thing is that we're two separate teams still. That operational team and that data team. We're not joined up. I mean, I think we got much closer than we have in the past. Data warehouse was always that downstream process that you found out that something had changed in the source system when it broke. And
Sure.
it was, and then the data team worked around the night to go and fix it, and unfortunately the unsung heroes, because they're all upset because they didn't it broke in the first place. But so I think having a closer working relationship with the operational systems will help trying to reduce those ones, as well as you said, the environments, having those multiple environments.
Yeah, and you've hit the nail on the head. Now, one of the things that I've always had the luxury of is, for most of my career, I had, access and responsibility to both the operational systems and the DSS system. So, I've got, if I screw it up in the DSS, if I've got a lost field, I did it. I threw it over my own fence and caught it. So I'm the one in trouble no matter what happens. This isn't often the case in the larger world. You've got one team that manages operational systems, another team that manages the DSS systems. The only shortcut there is get really close with each other. Constantly communicate. Again, data is not a technical field; it's a social club. Make sure you're.
I like that term. I like that term.
Make sure you're absolutely in sync with both your operational teams and your business, because, like I said, if you want to be effective, the technology is secondary. It's knowing everything going on in your business. And what I mean by effective is I mean actually causing change. Cause business change. So, that's one of those holes that maybe I'm going on a tangent here that's not 100% related with where I was going, but I see that hole a lot in data teams, or that distraction a lot in data teams, where they start chasing KPIs that just don't matter.
Yes.
Um,
I mean, yeah, I can get you. Oh well, you don't get me started on that one, but I think the problem is with KPIs being something. This is, you need to go back to like your business strategy and actually identify what KPIs are driving your business in the right direction and what you need to measure. And I think I've seen so many called toxic KPIs, the KPIs that actually encourage bad behaviour from one department because to another department. So everything all needs to be joined up and roll up to a common objective, and I think that's missing in many companies.
and I got a little bit of boost in my career on this front because I started in data because we needed to pass the COPC certification. COPC is based in Malcolm Baldrige. It's a process management structure. So my first big data warehouse was half business process analytics. so and this is where I get offended when I start seeing strange KPIs is, I see somebody had active users is a good example. Nobody knows what an active user is. We already brought this up.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Because why am I watching active users? It's a vanity metric. It's something that I want to know internally. Sure, it's something that C-suite is excited about because it's a vanity metric. But do my customers care? No. No, Fred that ordered a bicycle for me does not care how many daily active users I have. He really doesn't. What Fred cares about is that it was the bicycle he wanted was delivered on time and at quality. Well, these are things I should be measuring because Fred wants things on time and at quality. And I don't care if you're selling bicycles or tech support or heck, me at a data platform provider selling queries, the same metrics are going to be there. I need on time and high quality. And to support that, I need to manage my backlog. If I've got too many calls in the queue, if I'm in tech support, then I'm not going to be managing things on time. You get the idea. So the same 5 metrics will come up for any user, customer-facing process. And if it's not a customer-facing process, why am I managing this metric?
Yep.
So
it's an overhead that's not needed.
Exactly.
You're having to pay for that stuff, and it's not moving the dial in the right direction.
Right. So
I've got another one from Veronica. We've got quite some great questions actually in the chat, so I'll dip into them all the time. But Veronica, thanks for tuning in. And I know that Veronica does a lot of you do a lot of panels, you do a lot of appearances at conferences. I think that's one thing that I think we all try and do, and your post as well, Robert, and the podcast and shows I've got. But how do we reintroduce this knowledge even more? We'll have to get Joe to write a book on it, maybe. I don't know, or something. But I don't have an easy answer on this one, which is unlike me, I suppose. What's your view? What's your view, Robert?
It's not something I can force, obviously. And I share that question. I have that same question goes through my head every day, Veronica. Because I wake up and I look at the industry and it's not where I want it to be. Well, I also have teenagers. They're not where I want them to be either. That's okay. We'll move them one step forward today. One tiny step is all I ask every day. And so, that's part of the reason why I'm out in public so much is I got pulled from an environment where that knowledge was common and where I had cultivated that knowledge in my teams. And those team members have gone off to, lead their own teams, and they're slowly bringing that back around. But then when I got, kicked out in public by my marketing team, it seemed, a subject that does need to be paid attention to. And, we're not going to solve it all tomorrow. It took a decade to get us to where we are here, which may not be ideal. It may take us a decade to get us out. And that's okay. As long
Yeah.
as we can move it one step forward, and maybe I get to work with one guy on my next team who really comes up on board and really gets this stuff. And then he, quits on me and goes fires up his own team and does it himself. But what I am optimistic about is we're seeing demand for it. This
Yeah.
wasn't the case 5 years ago. We did not see the demand for things like data modeling, for things like peripheral process management, for all of the stuff that we're chatting about here 5 years ago. And that's why we ended up with so much manpower that we didn't need in the industry. And the reaction was the recent layoffs. I'd like to avoid that going forward, but the way to do it is, I think, is to just, preach to the approachable, and eventually, and at the end of the day, if you follow some of these guidelines, it shows up in your monthly bills, so you will become a proponent.
And I think you hit the nail. I mean, the whole data modeling thing, and I started ranting about that a couple of years ago, and and a lot of other like-minded people also joined in the rant. So I think to answer your question, Veronica, we just keep what we're doing at the moment and just focus on what we think is the worst, the atrocity or the bad things that are happening in our data world that we need to educate people on. So yeah, it's a slow old process, but as you say, one step at a time. I think is the
Yeah,
right approach.
yeah, and really, you do the key word there is approach.
Yeah,
Because yes, we've both been around forever. We've seen all sorts of things fail, and people try those same things today, and we know they're going to fail. And you can't just say no, that's dumb.
you got. I think I use the term battle scars, and it is you learn you learn from your successes, but you mainly learn from your failures, and when you can't teach people failures. That's unfortunately, as Veronica was saying with the same as your kids. You just have to let your kids make the mistake sometimes because they won't do it again. I'm not saying you need to go how
Oh,
far you go with that extreme, but
yeah,
there's no better lesson than a real life experience.
there's a lot of truth to that. So getting back to efficiency, if you don't, if you don't
Yes.
mind me pushing this conversation
No,
forward
of
a little
course not.
bit.
It's yeah. I talk all the time. This is your. I want the
So
audience probably wants to hear your views and things. Right.
I do want to wrap some of these things up that we've touched on in kind of a nice, neat bow,
Mm,
if I can here. It's a I'm challenging myself. So, we talked a bit about the technical side, how moving things into an operational data store and just dealing with time variance there can really improve that rotation. And the neat thing is streaming can handle that. You can even do this in streaming architectures. It's not rocket science, but simple zero transform or as little transform in your ODS as you possibly can. It'll become dependable. It won't screw up. You won't get errors. You won't introduce update anomalies that way. Cool. We're done with that. Move on. Next step, of course, you may or may not need a data warehouse. Now, a lot of people, are saying that, they're working on data warehouses. They're not really. They're just operational data stores. A data warehouse also has subject orientation, integration, and wait, time variant and non-volatility. There we go. I got the other three. Now, these three are hard. The hardest one's integration. Integration sucks. No way around it. This is where you're going to cause most of your havoc in your career. It's where you're going to burn all your manpower. You'll notice that consulting firms and vendors do not, really sell integration because we all know it's painful. If you've got your ODS online, which means all of your source systems are now co-located and time variance is already handled in your ODS, integration gets much, much easier. Now all I have to do is tie Joe from the accounting package to Joe in the sales package. I send that off to a feed store somewhere to handle identity management. That way, if I get a record of Joe from one system and not from the other system, it alerts me, says, hey, sort this out in your identity management system, which becomes another source. Bam, you've got integration. We're out of here. Now, if I don't have the data on Joe for the first day he's at work, nobody cares. It doesn't matter. He's not actually selling anything yet. And even if I miss a couple sales, remember, this is a data warehouse, not an operational data store. It's for strategic decisions. The 300 days after that first day is what we care about. If I miss one, I miss it. I can always backfill it. The last thing in this, so now we've got, and again, these are simple things. Once you break them down that simplistic, they get very, very easy. And if your operational data store is already time variant, you don't have to take care of time variants in your data warehouse. You won't create update anomalies, which means less manpower, less cost. You get the idea. Last is visualization. So this is where I tend to run into resistance in internal teams. When I tell the accounting team, I don't want to build you a bunch of dashboards. I think that's going to be terribly inefficient and you're not going to get your job done well. That generally lands like terribly, but
Yeah.
there's a plan here. At least there has been in my world. We talked a bit about KPIs and especially customer facing KPIs. Now we can apply those to internal teams using them as customers, but same basic difference. I need on-time backlog, volume rate, and quality if I'm in tech support, for instance, on all calls. What I can put these in a dashboard, and then all of my team leads will have to log into that dashboard and look through all these dashboards every day to see if anything is actionable. 9 chances out of 10, there's nothing there. So why are we doing this? By the 10th day, they stop doing it because they never see anything actionable. There's nothing here. So the dashboards are now useless because nobody's using them, because nothing really changed. He's managing his team well. Worse, every time somebody fires up one of these dashboards, I've got 17 queries running against my data warehouse, which is burning my compute costs and showing up in my AWS bill, right? And I've got 35 team leads. 50, yeah, no wonder my data warehouse is slow. Everybody's asking for something that doesn't actually tell them anything that they can do. The last letter in the business process world is action. I'm not here to cause insight. I can if I'm forced to. If my management says, Rob, stop at insight, I will, because I'm not insubordinate. But my real goal is to cause action. Mm-hmm. If I look at today's performance for a tech support agent who's taking calls and their on time improved by over a half standard deviation, their quality declined by a half standard deviation, and it affected my backlog because he was taking more, his on time was improving. If I take these 5 metrics and I can interrelate them and see what goes up, what goes down for Jeff on July 7th, I already know where the problems are. Because if Jeff's performance on a given metric breaks a standard deviation from the norm, I need to look at Jeff compared to his history. If Jeff's performance is a standard deviation of the norm higher or lower than his teammates, I need to look at Jeff. And that's not just if Jeff does poorly, that's also if Jeff does great. And I need to know that. And here's the trick. The data warehouse already knows that. So why are we looking at dashboards? Send us that message.
Yes.
And I guarantee you, if you can make this just part of normal duty in the BI world, your data warehouse costs will be cut in half, if not more, overnight.
Yeah, and you resonate with something that one of the first projects many years ago was for a very large car manufacturer, German one. Unfortunately, not the ones that we were talking about earlier, a different one. But and they wanted to have efficiency for their regional managers going around. Which region I need to focus on, and the same thing is which dealers they need to focus on, and then if it was which area of that dealer was had an outlier compared to all the others ones. What would have been, as you're saying it, which it was still a dashboard back then. What would have been great is we go and schedule the meetings for the salespeople or the regional managers to who they need to go and speak to, with the details of what areas that are needed,
right? And
then probably just tell the dealer, by the way, these are the areas that this guy's going to want to talk to you about when they come in, so they can go and prepare or get the right people there. You're more efficient with your time, more efficient with more efficient with the outcomes and what gets done. But you're right. It's just we need to have actionable activities that come off this data, which drives the value.
Right.
Otherwise, you say it's just a dashboard that's going to be collecting dust if the information's not actually telling them what they need to do next.
Well, and honestly, we prototyped this 25 years ago at Spectrum, doing exactly that in a call center environment. The reason we did it is because we were an outsourced tech support provider. So I was in Spokane with 300, 600 tech support analysts, and our customers were companies like Microsoft and IBM, et cetera. So if you called for Windows 98 tech support, you get me. So Microsoft would pay us a bonus if we hit certain quality metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm an industrious little DBA. I'm going to push the quality metrics of the whole call center up. I'm going to have all 300 of them on my team pushing it, making it happen. The way to make that happen is not to report insights. It's to push action. So if somebody's quality was slipping, we'd push it to the team lead and say, hey, this happened. We don't know what happened. We don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's not normal. Could you let us know what happened here? And believe it or not, within 12 months, we saw our quality assurance rates, customer satisfaction rates, increase by 10% in 12 months, which was millions and millions and millions of dollars in that contract. So, there seems to be a thread going here. I want to do the same thing to the data industry I did the tech support industry. I just want to move it a little better one day at a time. And we'll get there. But yeah, it does work in the field. If you can get action faster than you can get, analytics, you're onto something. Not only will you make your data team more efficient, you make the whole company more efficient. I would, however,
make them more money as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I would, however, caution against using the term action in a 3-letter acronym like decision support system, because that would sound bad.
Yeah. Yes.
It would be descriptive.
Yes, but not what we want. I've got a couple other. I want to just get this one.
Oh, sure.
So, Kieran, I do remember this well, actually. So, thanks for the question. And I'm going to try and, between us, I'm going to try and give you a different answer to last time. And I did a panel a couple of years ago at the summit, and we did a Millennium Falcon Lego set was the for the best question, and Kieran won it. And the best question was who's responsible cloud spend for the data tools? And I said everyone. And it looks like it probably was a bit of a cop out, but I've probably got a different view, and I think with a product focused sort of mentality or internally within your in your organization, if you're thinking of everything you deliver as a product, each of those products need to know who their customer is, how much value or what revenue you're going to get from it. Then ultimately you need to know what the associated cost is for it. So sure. I think it would be if you have one, I think it'd be the product owner that would be responsible for the cloud spend of what they're using, and then each different product owner should pick up that. I don't think we can have one individual in a whole company, because they're just going to be the cost police, and they probably won't. Yeah, it probably won't go down that well. But I think the product owner would be my view on this one now.
I think this goes. I think I'd split this to 2 different subjects. One is who's responsible for collecting and analyzing costs. Well, it's just another metric man pilot on with everything else I'm carrying as a data warehouse architect. Yeah, I know. I got bills coming in. We'll toss it in with all the other bills in our data warehouse. Who's responsible for managing it gets a little more tricky. And I think you did touch on a couple things there. If we're productizing it, then obviously whoever the product lead is ultimately responsible for that spend. I would also suggest, just because I'm a control freak, and and that may not come off so much when I'm in public, but when I'm managing my own data teams, I am an absolute control freak, and I may or may not be responsible for that data spend, but you can bet your butt I'm going to be very, very serious about it, because if I can keep things tidy, it makes my life easier. I need fewer products that I'm depending on. I need fewer, vendors that I'm depending on. I need fewer blocks in an architecture diagram that I can depend on. And all of that comes back to spend, but it makes life easier and makes me more efficient. Kind of on a side note there, I've found that my quality of life is inversely proportional to the number of internal combustion engines I own.
Yeah, so we were talking earlier about your passion for building engines as well. So, yes.
Yeah, if my lawnmower is electric instead of carbureted, I don't have to clean a carburetor anymore. It's kind of that same mentality. If I can simplify everything in my data world and add lightness, then I'm in a good shape. Now, is that my responsibility? Probably not. But if I have access, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, very true. Very true. There's one more question I probably want to bring up as well at some point, but I want to give you enough time to finish off your thread. So there's a question from or a comment from Matthew Christian, even though his name doesn't come up on the panel at the side, but he's asking one about skills, but yeah, we'll save that last question to the end.
I don't know, it's really weird, as I normally have something stuck in my brain about to go on another rant, but I didn't hear. So what's his question?
Okay, let's go for it. Here we go. So mention that the loss of knowledge in the creative data industry, along with other factors that often inhibit the learning process that transform people into highly skilled tradesmen. Do we tackle this learning problem with a recommended data team structure, a learning path, or a trade association equivalent, or another approach?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I'll start with a little bit of it, but I don't know the whole answer because I think that it's a big challenge. But I think having a blueprint. I talked about. I did a post about is architecture. We talked about architecture a skill or a role. Is data modeling a skill or a role? I've got this in my mind. I've got this post I'm going to do somewhere. Imagine Tetris. Okay, Tetris. Each little block in Tetris is a different sort of skill or knowledge that you need.
Yeah.
And you only ever complete the knowledge when you've actually got all the things in. It could be you could be playing a simple game of Tetris, just one big block. That one person can have all the right skills.
Certainly.
Very unlikely, but they at least may have what's needed. And I think I've got just enough and just in time. So if you've got just enough skills and you're able to deliver that, just in time, then it's you don't need to have 20 people, 15 people in your team. You can maybe have a smaller amount, but the maturity of what you can achieve would be X. If you want to have some really, really extreme use cases or very tough use cases that using LLMs, using generative AI, using graph databases, things like that, then you're probably going to find one person that does everything or will be happy to do everything. So I think it's working out what you need at that right point, and then to do it once you've got that core team you start with, is maybe giving them a career path or a training path that will allow them to get some deeper knowledge. I think Veronica did a post about T-shaped skills, and I think I refer to it pie-shaped is alternative breadth across a lot and depth across a couple. I think that's one approach really to help do it.
I would generally agree with you. I'm just reading through this the last sentence again. Do we tackle the learning problem with a recommended data team structure, a learning path, or a trade association or equivalent? Okay, the trade association or equivalent is out. It has to be. Have you met data people? We are not built for no. We all believe we're unique. We're going to take our own path, so that's out. Data team structure, in my history, I've built a lot of data teams. I will often start building a data team filling roles with our needs. So you mentioned it, that there's Tetris pieces. Well, maybe I need someone who's really good at visualization today. So I'll bring up, someone on that does visualization. I'm not leaving them there. This is the start. This is the beginning. of what's going to be 3 really, really mind-bending years, because my job with all of my reports is to make sure that I can get them to the point where they can replace me. Because eventually I'm going to tick somebody off and they're going to run me over with a bus. That's just reality. And now, even if it never comes to the point that they replace me, it will come to the point where they're going to leave me and go start their own organization or their own team. This is my goal. This is how we spread this knowledge. It's very organic, but yeah, maybe I do need somebody that's really strong in ETL pipeline, because I'm dying on the ETL front. Okay, we bring them on and then we start rocking. We're going to go for 3 years and you're going to know everything there is about relational theory, process management. You get the idea. I think that's a much more effective approach. It's going to take longer. We can't force it. We have to ask people to come along with us.
Yeah, I totally agree. And maybe Matthew, well, that will maybe be the generate a thought for a post at some time, Matthew, on that one. And I think there's another question he's asked, but I think we'll follow up on that one later, because we're approaching the hour, and I've got to go and get a flight as well. But it's been fantastic. We haven't been short of things to talk about at all, and I haven't even gone back to our notes of things that we said we're going to cover. And I don't think we pretty much haven't covered them all, I'm pretty sure. But as you know, to wrap up, what would you want to the summary of efficiency in the data industry? What was just to close off the topic?
You know, in contrast with everything you're reading, you know, in the press and in the social media world, and this sounds like heresy for me, just coming off working for a platform provider. Your data platform can't solve this for you. It is the smallest problem in your list of problems.
Yep.
Your biggest problems in efficiency are architecture, design, and communication. If you can hit these 3, you've got a significant advantage. I can take a team of 3 to 5 guys and make it do what 20 to 50 people would do otherwise. It all comes down to knowing your role, knowing the process, and following the rules. And if you do that, you don't end up in the penalty box dealing with quality issues and Lord only knows what else. It just reduces all that overhead. You really, you know, you have to step back at everything and take a look at it and think, you know, just like an automotive engineer, if you want it to go faster, add lightness and simplify. That's it.
Yep. Keep it simple with a kiss. Keep it simple, stupid is what I was taught at a young age.
And in everything you look at, whether it's an architecture diagram or a team diagram or anything, the first thought that should go through your mind as a data designer is, what of this can I throw away?
Yeah.
Always. What can I get rid of here? Because every block on that diagram, every block in that management chain is going to cost you time.
Definitely. So I think we'll have to pause it here, but I'm sure there's going to be a follow up on this one at some stage, Robert. Or I'd have to get you back on the show at some stage, because we've got plenty to talk about and some great questions from the audience that are tuned in. So thank you for all of that. But for anyone that wants to get hold of you, go on.
This has been an interesting conversation, because for the first time in many, many years, I'm not beholden to an employer. So I've been taking some time off lately. So it was good to be honest for a change. Obviously, if any of you need to get a hold of me, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm not quiet. And hey, if you've got a gnarly data problem, holler. I'd be more than happy to jump in and see what I can do to help out.
Well, I'll say that from my experience of talking to you and our discussions, you come highly recommended. So I think, as I said this before, if you want a slice of Robert, get him before he's gone, because I don't think he'll be on the market for long. So absolute pleasure, Robert, and we'll have to catch up again. If I get to the West Coast, I'll be sure to see if I can catch up and maybe go for a track day. You never know.
Yeah, more than happy to. I'd look forward to it. Great talking to you,
brilliant.
Chris.
Well, thanks again, and thanks to the
All
audience.
right.
Oh, next week we've got Alex Dean from Slow Pals on the show. So
Outstanding.
tune in for that one. All right. Well, thanks again, Robert. I think we'll call it a wrap. I'm going to go and try and get back to UK. All
All
right.
right.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Chris.
Bye-bye.